In the spring of 1975, Sharron Prior, a 16-year-old with dreams of becoming a veterinarian, vanished from her Point St. Charles neighborhood in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Her disappearance sparked a frantic search that ended in heartbreak when her lifeless body was found days later. For nearly 5 decades, the mystery of her tragic demise continued, until breakthroughs in DNA testing and the resolve of her family uncovered the chilling truth. Sharron Prior, born on February 9, 1959, in Point St. Charles, Montreal, spent much of her time at the local Boys and Girls Club. She participated in various sports like floor hockey and basketball, embodying an athleticism that matched her adventurous personality. In her family of 5 siblings, Sharron stood out for her bright disposition and close bonds, particularly with her twin sisters, Maureen and Doreen. Sharron was a dedicated student and made sure to put her effort into studies at Verdun High School. By all accounts, Sharron had all the potential of a promising future. It would be a future that would tragically be taken too soon. On March 29, 1975, it was Easter weekend, and Sharron's day began with the familiar routines of family and holiday preparations in their home at 445 Congregation Street. As the sun went down, the Prior family gathered for dinner, and after dinner was over, one of Sharron's longtime friends stopped by. They then left the home around 7:10 p.m. and headed towards Marina's Pizzeria, a popular hangout just 5 blocks away on Wellington and Ash Avenue. She intended to meet up with friends and her boyfriend, John McAleer, as she often did. Her friend offered to accompany her, but Sharron assured her she would be fine alone. It was the last time her friend would ever see Sharron alive. Sharron typically returned home by 11 p.m., rarely later than 1 a.m., and was always thoughtful to call if delayed. That night, however, no call came, and Sharron did not return home. Concern grew quickly among her family and friends. Days passed with no sign of Sharron, prompting a community-wide search effort that included classmates from Verdun High School and local authorities combing the neighborhood in desperate hope of finding her safe. 3 days later, those hopes would be dashed when Sharron's lifeless body was found in Longueuil Field. The field was maintained by a local beekeeper who typically secured it with a padlocked gate. That day, the beekeeper noticed the gate unexpectedly opened. When he approached the area, he discovered Sharron's body lying in the snow. The autopsy performed revealed a disturbingly violent end for Sharron. Her jeans and underwear had been removed, and she had been tied up, assaulted, and asphyxiated with her body covered in bruises. She had 2 jaw fractures, a broken nose, and a hole in one of her cheeks, likely caused when one of her teeth had become loose during the struggle. The investigators believed that she had passed away from her internal injuries, and that when she was dumped in the field, she had still been alive. As the investigation for Sharron's slaying case began, the police theorized that the remote location of her body was chosen because the perpetrator assumed that the field would not be used until late spring, allowing the body to remain undetected. Blood trails lead investigators to believe that more than one person was involved. The investigation considered various theories. One detective suggested Sharron might have accepted a ride from someone on her way to the restaurant before she was attacked. Another theory was that a trucker passing through was responsible. There was also the possibility of a serial perpetrator. Quebec had numerous unsolved cases involving women similar in appearance to Sharron. In fact, at the same time, a 22-year-old woman reported an attempted kidnapping by a tall, white, English-speaking man with blue eyes, brown hair, and a mustache on the same street where Sharron was abducted, raising suspicions that it could have been the same man. As months turned into years, the trail went cold. Despite the initial intensity of the case and numerous leads, no arrests were made, and the case remained unsolved. Decades later, the case of Sharron Prior experienced a breakthrough with advancements in DNA technology. In 2022, investigators revisited the evidence with fresh eyes and new methods, hoping to uncover what had eluded them for so long. DNA samples taken from the crime scene were reanalyzed, using advanced techniques not available during the original investigation. This re-examination gave investigators a DNA match to the Romine family from Charleston, West Virginia. In May 2023, the match led them to Franklin Maywood Romine, who passed away in 1982. Romine was a convicted offender with a criminal record. He had been living in Montreal and Longueuil at the time of Sharron's disappearance. Although not initially a suspect, Romine's DNA matched the DNA found at the crime scene. His physical description also matched the abductor seen on that same street. Unfortunately, with Romine passing away in 1983, authorities could not make an arrest. Despite this, the confirmation brought a mixture of relief and renewed sorrow to Sharron's family. While the identification provided long-awaited answers, it also resurfaced the pain of their loss. Sharron Prior's family never gave up hope that one day they would find answers and justice for their beloved daughter and sister. Their unwavering determination, combined with advances in DNA technology, ultimately brought the truth to light. Though the knowing who was responsible for Sharron's demise came too late for an arrest, it provided a sense of closure for the family and proved the importance of persistence in cold cases. During the news conference, the family thanked the police on both sides of the border for the miracle of science that led them to their sister's perpetrator. Sharron's sister Doreen said, "The solving of Sharron's case will never bring Sharron back, but knowing that her perpetrator is no longer on this earth and will not take anyone's life anymore brings us to somewhat of a closure." Sharron's other sister Maureen said, "We will always be your mom, your little brother and sisters, who sat there at that window that Easter weekend, hoping to see you walking on home. You may never have come back to our house or Congregation Street that weekend, but you have never left our hearts, and you never will. We love you, Sharron. Now may you truly rest in peace." In the quiet of an October morning in 1987, Boise, Idaho's serene streets were shattered by a heinous crime. 65-year-old Joyce Casper, beloved owner of a local shop, was found slain in her car. Then, 36 years later, a breakthrough in forensic science offered answers to the questions behind her tragic end. Joyce Casper's career as a small business owner began when she opened Casper's Vista Hallmark shop in the Vista Village Shopping Center, a venture that quickly became a cherished neighborhood fixture. Her passion for life and commitment to others left a mark on all who knew her, making her untimely demise in 1987 all the more shocking and heartbreaking for the people of Boise. On the morning of October 13th, 1987, Joyce's life came to a violent end. Her body was discovered inside her car at Day Drive and Robert Street. Mere blocks from her beloved store, she had been strangled and assaulted. In the weeks leading up to her tragic fate, Joyce had reported a terrifying encounter at her shop, involving a young man between the ages of 17 and 25 with slicked back black hair. The male assailant had apparently attempted to assault Joyce at her business. After a brief altercation, he fled eastbound from the shop, fueling speculation that the tragic slaying might have been an act of retaliation. Although there was the presence of male DNA at the crime scene, forensic technology of the time proved insufficient to identify her assailant. The DNA collected did give investigators a profile of the suspect as a young Latino man with brown or hazel eyes and brown or black hair. This genetic fingerprint, though crucial, did not help identify a specific individual due to the lack of databases like CODIS at the time. Joyce's case went on as a haunting mystery that Boise police refused to let go unsolved. Over the years, it was reopened multiple times, each instance bringing new hope fueled by advancements in technology. Detective Paul Yagosh recalled the exhaustive efforts with more than 145 suspects meticulously investigated and eliminated from suspicion. Detective Josiah Ransom's dedication to the case was unwavering. He pursued every lead with tenacity, leveraging forensic laboratories and traveling across state lines to gather crucial DNA samples from individuals in genetic genealogy databases. This meticulous approach was evidence of the department's commitment to leveraging cutting-edge technology and exhaustive investigative methods in their pursuit of justice for Joyce. In 2017, Detective Jagosh collaborated with Parabon Nanolabs, a company specializing in DNA phenotyping and genetic genealogy. Parabon utilized advanced DNA analysis techniques to create a genetic profile of the suspect, providing insights into his ancestry, physical traits, and potential familial relationships. This profile suggested a likely connection to someone of Puerto Rican descent, offering a narrower focus for investigators. Then in 2019, Jagosh enlisted the expertise of Identifinders International. Using the DNA profile obtained earlier, Identifinders began constructing a family tree based on genetic matches found in public and private genetic databases. This meticulous process involved combing through thousands of potential relatives to trace common genetic markers back to the suspect. In July 2023, through painstaking research and cross-referencing, Identifinders narrowed down the family tree to a specific lineage that eventually led to Frank A. Rodriguez in 2023. Although Rodriguez took his own life in 2007, his genetic profile matched the DNA found at the crime scene. Investigators found that Rodriguez's family members were not entirely surprised by the revelation that he was implicated in Joyce's case. Based on discussions with his family, it appeared that Rodriguez had a troubled past and behavioral patterns that aligned with the circumstances surrounding the crime. This included his presence in the vicinity of Joyce's business before her untimely demise and his potential involvement in previous altercations in the area. After 36 years of persistent investigation, the Boise Police Department's relentless pursuit of justice for Joyce Casper has finally come to an end. Captain Matt Jones said, "The Boise Police Department would like to recognize the efforts of all involved in this complex investigation. While nothing can bring back their lost loved one, we are proud that after 36 years and countless hours of investigation, we were able to bring some form of closure to the Casper family." Joyce's son, Chuck Casper, said, "Every chapter in your life needs an end, an outcome. And until the crime was solved, we just did not know. Everybody wants to know the end of a story, even sad ones." Pauline Casper, Joyce's daughter, said, "It is hard to put into words, to put a face to this person that did this horrendous thing to your mother. But when we saw a picture of him, he just seemed like a guy. Some guy you might see walking down the street. It was really disorienting in a way." Joyce's children said that they have mixed feelings about Rodriguez's demise. He will never be brought to justice, but at the same time, they wondered if an early demise prevented him from harming others. They also think a trial would have been difficult for them. 2 women's lives were brutally taken in 1990 in Lee County, Florida. Robin Cornell and Lisa Story's lives were taken by a perpetrator known as a seemingly private individual with a troubling personality. Finally, after decades, his shocking actions brought him into the limelight, and the dramatic revelations led to a long-awaited quest for justice. On May 8, 1990, Jan Cornell visited her boyfriend's house, leaving her close friend, Lisa Story, to babysit her 11-year-old daughter, Robin Cornell. Lisa, who was 32 years old at the time, was a trusted and beloved friend of the family. Tragically, when Jan returned to her Cape Coral apartment the following day, she discovered a horrifying scene. Both Robin and Lisa had been brutally slain, their lifeless bodies found suffocated inside the apartment. As the investigators began examining the crime scene, they found that the apartment had been ransacked. There were clear signs of a violent struggle, but most disturbing was the evidence left behind by the perpetrator. Male DNA was found on the bedsheet, pillowcase, and inside Robin's body, suggesting that the crime had sexual undertones. Despite this crucial piece of forensic evidence, the technology available at the time was limited, making it difficult for authorities to extract more leads from the scene. The investigation into the slayings of Robin and Lisa began immediately, but it quickly hit a wall. With few substantial clues and the forensic tools of the era still in their early stages, the detectives struggled to build a solid case. Investigators worked tirelessly, but as days turned into weeks, the trail of leads grew cold. For nearly 3 decades, the case of Robin and Lisa remained unsolved. The case was reopened in 2020, and new forensic techniques led to a DNA match. The match was to Joseph Zieler. He was arrested in 2016 on an unrelated assault charge. As part of the standard procedure, he was required to submit a DNA sample. To the shock of investigators, his DNA matched the forensic evidence found at the crime scene of the 1990 double slaying of Robin Cornell and Lisa Story. Joseph Zieler was born in 1962 and raised by his parents in the United States of America. He holds American nationality and belongs to the white ethnicity, identifying himself as a follower of Christianity. Throughout his life, Zieler maintained a very private lifestyle, avoiding the spotlight and keeping most details about his personal life hidden from public scrutiny. His reserved nature extended to his family life, where he was rarely seen in the media's glare. Zieler is married to Bonnie Nicely, and together they have a son named Zachary Zieler. Despite having a seemingly ordinary family life, Zieler's character has been described as arrogant, with his behavior often raising concerns. He was known to engage in questionable and illegal activities, though many of the details remained under wraps. His interactions with others often portrayed a troubling personality, one that eventually led to tragic consequences. Tragedy struck when Zieler allegedly took the life of his son, Zachary. According to reports, the weapon used in this shocking crime was a pellet gun. The incident left the community in disbelief, as Zieler's actions defied the image of a private yet seemingly intact family unit. The crime left a permanent scar on those who knew him, shattering any illusions of normalcy in his household. Zieler's DNA, however, was the breakthrough that finally reopened the case of Robin and Lisa and identified him as the prime suspect in this brutal case. Following his arrest, Zieler's menacing and manipulative behavior became even more apparent. He sought to intimidate Jan Cornell, the mother of 11-year-old Robin, by sending her 3 threatening letters. In these letters, Zieler warned her to obstruct the investigation, implying that there would be dire consequences if she failed to do so. His threats were an attempt to sow fear and gain control, despite being behind bars. The letters revealed a man unrepentant and dangerous, showing no remorse for the devastating pain he had caused. His intimidation tactics failed, however, as the investigation proceeded undeterred by his threats. During his trial in May 2023, Zieler put forth an extraordinary and bizarre defense. He claimed that his DNA was found at the crime scene because he had allegedly had consensual intercourse with Jan Cornell, months before the slayings took place. This shocking claim was his attempt to explain away the presence of his male DNA, which had been found on the bed linens and inside Robin's body. Jan Cornell said she had never even met her daughter's perpetrator before the slayings and was disgusted by his outrageous claims. She said, "He is remorseless. He is evil. There are no feelings there. He is just blank." However, the court and jury were not swayed by this narrative. Zieler's story lacked credibility and contradicted the overwhelming forensic evidence that placed him at the scene of the crime. His desperate attempt to deflect responsibility only reinforced his culpability in the eyes of the public and the legal system. On June 26, 2023, the day of his sentencing, Joseph Zieler displayed a final act of defiance and violence in court. As Jan Cornell sat in the gallery, watching the proceedings that would bring her some semblance of closure, Zieler suddenly lashed out. In a shocking outburst, he elbowed his own attorney, Kevin Shirley, striking him in the head, which led to an immediate commotion in the courtroom. Officers quickly subdued Zieler, wrestling him to the ground as he protested that his attorney had failed to defend him adequately. This violent act was emblematic of Zieler's volatile nature, reinforcing the danger he posed, even while standing on the brink of sentencing. Attorney Shirley said that he was fine after the incident. He said, "I had no idea he was going to do something like that. Obviously, he has been planning on that. But as he was going down, he said he was sorry he missed." Ultimately, Joseph Zieler was found guilty of 2 counts of first-degree slaying. After a 5-hour deliberation, the jury voted 10-2 in favor of the end-of-life penalty. The judge followed the jury's recommendation and sentenced Zieler to end of life for taking the lives of Robin Cornell and Lisa Story. For the families of the victims, the verdict marked the end of a long and agonizing journey toward justice. In the shadows beneath a Des Moines, Iowa bridge, Stanley Golinsky met a tragic fate. Found under the railway tracks, his demise was shrouded in mystery, with investigators wondering if it was an accident, if he took his own life, or something more sinister. Nearly a decade later, a shocking confession would put an end to the long-standing mystery and confirm what one detective may have known all along. 56-year-old Stanley Golinsky lived a humble yet meaningful life that touched many in Des Moines. Originally from Indiana, Pennsylvania, he relocated to Des Moines in 2009, seeking a fresh start. Despite facing challenges like periods of homelessness and occasional legal issues, Stanley remained resilient. On a fateful day in October 2012, Stanley's life took a tragic turn under a downtown Des Moines railroad bridge. His lifeless body was found by a passerby along the bike trail on the west bank of the Des Moines River. The discovery was made after a concerned individual, unable to call for help due to a cell phone with no battery life, sought assistance from a nearby construction worker. This led to a 911 call, prompting Des Moines police to investigate the scene. Subsequent investigations and an autopsy later confirmed that Stanley had been the victim of a senseless slaying. His injuries, initially unclear, pointed towards a violent end inflicted by another person. Lieutenant Tim Peake led a relentless investigation into the tragic case, spending months navigating the camps along the riverbanks and interviewing numerous individuals within the Des Moines homeless community Stanley was a part of. During his investigation, Peake uncovered disturbing details about a man named William Billy Ruley, who is known for his intimidation tactics and bullying behavior towards the homeless. Many spoke of their fear of Ruley, and despite Peake's suspicions that Ruley could somehow be involved, he faced a daunting challenge: lack of concrete evidence. The case remained cold for years, with investigators frustratingly close to finding answers, but just out of reach. But after years of meticulous investigation, a breakthrough came in the form of a shocking confession. On September 20th, 2021, William Ruley, who was already serving a 25-year sentence for another crime, approached a corrections officer at Anamosa State Penitentiary. He expressed a desire to unburden himself of the guilt that had weighed on him for years and confessed to taking the life of Stanley Golinsky. After his confession, Lieutenant Tim Peake recounted how Ruley provided specific, graphic details about the crime. Details known only to a select few within the police department. This solidified Peake's conviction that Ruley was the perpetrator he had been hunting all along. Ruley's confession led to his formal charge of first-degree slaying in October 2021, alongside his existing sentence for burglary, ensuring that he would face justice for both crimes concurrently. On February 23rd, 2023, at his sentencing, Ruley apologized, saying, "I would like to change and will do a lot better and work through the prison system and take classes, or whatever I need to do better." 36-year-old Ruley was sentenced to 50 years in prison and must serve at least 35 before becoming eligible for parole. He told Lieutenant Peake that part of the reason for coming forward was that he was coming up for parole and had no place to go, preferring to live in prison. For Lieutenant Peake and those that knew Stanley, the closure of the case brought relief after years of the pursuit of truth.